Everybody needs to know about this plant. And this plant grows easily. Let's talk about blueberries. Blueberries will grow for 50 years, so blueberries are an excellent investment for the future. But what I really like about blueberries is you can plant them where you would plant an ornamental bush, so you can get the production of a blueberry, but have the beauty of the bush. You can also trim and prune the blueberry into whatever shape, just like you would any other bush. And yes, they'll still give you ample amounts of blueberries, and I've killed a lot of blueberries, so I can tell you exactly what not to do. Blueberries are a bush that fruit after winter when it starts getting warm. Now, depending on where you live, north to south latitude is when you're gonna get blueberries in the season. You can start with any size blueberry plant, but the bigger plant you start with, like this one for example, will skip you 5 years of grow time. So start with as big as plants as you can, and blueberries will naturally, every winter going into fall, will lose all their leaves. So we're going into fall right now, and you can see we're starting to lose leaves. This right here is probably from underwatering. Blueberries need to stay very, very moist. Like if they dry out, they're gonna probably die. So highly recommend you put these on a drip system with a timer. It's better to overwater blueberries than it is to underwater blueberries, unlike most plants. But you want to make sure that the soil never dries out. So stick your hand in the ground every 2 or 3 days and get an idea of how fast your soil dries out, and you'll begin to be able to tune your cycling of how often you need to water. There's different kinds of blueberry plants. You have southern highbush and you have northern highbush. The northern highbush is good for up north where it's colder. And then you have the southern highbush, which is good for south where it's warmer. The difference is they've just been bred to be able to handle the temperature difference better. And both of them can get to 9 feet tall. So you can, I mean, this is already this tall. Imagine in a few more years. But you have to remember with blueberries, you're going to have to come in here and trim them, take out all this dead growth because the plant will naturally prune and die off these lower branches. So that way it can put its energy towards the top where it's getting sun and air. This is where the flowers are gonna be. This is where the air is gonna be. So that's where the plant's gonna throw off all the blueberries. So come in once a year at least and go ahead and prune and take out all this dead stuff in here. The blueberries I grow are Kestrel, Sharp Blue, and Jewel, because mixing different varieties gives you more fruit and bigger fruits because of cross-pollination. And the more flowers you get, the more blueberries you get. And bees absolutely love blueberry flowers. Plant your blueberries in good, rich, water-holding soil. It still needs to drain, but you don't want to drain too fast because blueberries cannot take a drought. They're not like other plants. You do not want them to dry out or they'll die. Like I said, I've killed a lot of blueberries and this is how I kill them. I forget to water them for a week or I get lazy and they die every single time. Use a soil mix that holds water and plant your blueberries in a spot that stays more moist than you would plant other things. And blueberries prefer an acidic soil. So what that means is mix in some pine bark or some pine needles. Normally, I recommend you plant most things on a mound so it helps them drain and dry out better. But blueberries are the absolute exception. If you try to grow blueberries and you're in Florida or you're someplace warm, tropical, the reason why your blueberries die is because they dry out too much. And especially if you live in a place that has very sandy soil. So we're gonna talk about planting the blueberries in a little bit, but I just wanted to make it very clear that you do not want to plant a blueberry on a mound. You actually want it to be in a place that stays very moist, just like up north in the very peat bogs and the very pine needle rich compost soil. It stays very moist because of all the organic matter. Hence, we're gonna try to mimic that when we plant. All right, blueberries are one of the flowering plants that do best with as much light possible. If you want a lot of flowers, you want to make sure you get as much light possible. So these are set in a row, north to south. Just like most bushes, you can put them close together, but if you do, keep in mind you're going to have to be doing more trimming because all this bottom stuff down here is going to be growing on top of each other. And whenever you have plants limbs growing on top of each other, you can get diseases and problems. And so basically, always come in, remove this bottom stuff, okay? This spot right here, we're in a very sandy soil. This soil is terrible for blueberries, okay? If you just plant blueberries in sand or a very mineral-rich soil without the organic matter, and organic matter is loose leaves, sticks, manure, broken down hay, straw, all that stuff. Like if you go into a forest floor and you stick your hand in the ground, all that dark, crumbly stuff, that's the organic matter. That is what blueberries rely on. So if you don't have that, you're gonna have to add that. So we can do that with just finding a compost from any kind of nursery. We just wanna make sure that it's completely broken down compost, it's dark, and it smells really strong. If it smells strong, then that means it's got the biology. And the biology, the bacteria, the fungus, in that is what's gonna feed your plant's roots. Now, blueberries cannot take the nitrate fertilizers, the little pelletized fertilizers that most plants can. If you use that, you will burn the roots and you could kill your blueberry and they won't be productive. Nitrogen is responsible for the green growth. It's not responsible for the flowers and the blueberries. So what I recommend you do is use any kind of organic fertilizer blend, cottonseed blend, which is good for the nitrogen. That is also acidic, which is what blueberries prefer. Like we said, we don't want to put it on a mound. We want to make sure that it's down, it's level with the ground. Don't bury the stem, but make sure it's level with the ground. They will grow amazing if you water them consistently. If you skip watering or you don't think you're going to be able to be consistent, put them on a timer, because once again, if you forget, they will die. All right, let's get these ready to plant. I'm gonna go through here, and this is gonna look kind of mean, all right? But this is necessary because these are long and lanky, and they've been neglected. They haven't been watered that well. We can see a lot of brown leaves on these. It makes sense. We're in a warm place and they're in pots, and I don't recommend growing blueberries in pots if you don't have them on automatic watering, because you will for sure kill blueberries in the pots. So let's go through here and let's clean these up and get them ready to plant. By cutting them and shaping them and making them smaller, we're gonna allow them to regrow. Whenever you take the tops of these off, the root mass is more than the top. That provides more energy for regrowth. And that's a good way to just kind of get your plant healthy again. If you're having trouble with it not really growing that well, just cut it back. And what's cool about most plants in general is whenever you cut a plant, the roots will naturally prune themselves. And so if they're sick roots, they'll naturally die off and it'll make new roots and they'll be healthier. So let's prune them up, make them look good. Anytime you get dead growth like this, you can typically tell if you need to prune it by, if it's dead, you can break a piece off. And if it's dead and it's dead, as you keep breaking it, then you know you should keep cutting it back. And then eventually you'll have an eye and you'll know what it looks like. And it's typically darker and it's shrank. It looks like it's dried out. It's dried out. You know then you should for sure remove it. Now you definitely could use an automatic trimmer for blueberries, just like you can any bush. But I want to take my time and shape these. So the idea here is to make these into a structural shape that is going to be healthy. We don't want to have long branches that are going to be really extended and flopping over, because once these get full of fruit, they get some weight on them. So by cutting them back, cutting the tops down, we're gonna strengthen up and make it more sturdy. So next season, it'll be able to hold more fruit. One thing I didn't realize about blueberries when I first started growing them is that they only give you blueberries one time a year, and they give you blueberries for about 2 or 3 months. And it's kind of steady ripening. You can come out every day and pick a few blueberries. Now, after that, they go to straight green growth. So after all the blueberries come off, the plant will spend the rest of its time that year just getting bigger for the next season. The bigger and more branching you get on your blueberry, the more blueberries you're gonna get the following year. So after you get your blueberries, don't neglect your blueberry, because that time after that is what you're going to get the next year. So it's really important that you take care of your blueberries through the entire year if you want to continue to get blueberries and for them to be healthy. So this is pretty much a worst case situation. I mean, these are not healthy blueberries by the slightest. And so I just want to show you that these blueberries are going to be perfectly healthy come next season because we're doing this trimming on it. So don't be afraid to cut your blueberries. Just like any bush, they will grow back, and they're going to grow back a lot healthier. Whenever you make a cut on your dead stem of your blueberry, always try to make it at an angle so that way water can run down this. But I mean, we can see that this is very, very dead. And this plant will be okay. Now, the reason why we mulch is because under the mulch, you can see it's still wet. And this plant has not been watered for at least a week. And you can see how well it holds moisture. So this is gonna help your blueberries not completely dry out. Once again, that's what's gonna kill them. But the other real benefit of the mulch is that it's gonna break down and continue to feed the roots of your plant, because fungus actually goes in here. See if we can find some. You'll see these little white webs right here. We can see how this in here, this is actually a fungus that's digesting, breaking down all this wood chips. And you can see the roots from this tree grow right with the fungus, and they work in a symbiotic relationship. And what happens is this right here, this lignin, it's very hard to break down, but the fungus can break it down very easily. And it trades the root of the tree for the sugar, and in turn for the minerals from what's left over in this old decaying tree. So it's the perfect relationship, and blueberries rely on this heavily. So once again, you must have a lot of organic matter, and you must mulch if you want to grow really good blueberries. This cassava has got to go. I like cassava, but I want a blueberry right here. So we're going to replant these. Now, depending on how good your soil is, or in other words, how deep this dark, rich organic matter goes, is how wide or how deep we're gonna have to go to amend it. So if your soil is already very, very rich, then you won't need to go as deep or as wide as you would if you have very poor soil, because you wanna make sure that the roots have good soil to grow into as they get older. So just look at your soil, use your eyes. If it's dark like this, then that's good. That means you don't need as big of a hole. But if we're gonna hopefully find some sand down here in a minute, and we'll know, okay, we need to amend that spot. Now keep in mind that most roots don't go much deeper than a foot, okay? And the reason why is because, once again, this is where all the good stuff is. This is all the organic matter. This is where the bacteria and the fungus live that feeds your plant's roots. So you don't need to go crazy deep, but you do need to go wide, because as the roots grow, they're gonna expand. Okay, so we're starting to hit some sand. I don't know if you can tell, but you see that white color? So that tells me we have about a foot of good organic matter. After that, we're pure sand. So that's good, that's a good depth, but we're gonna go a little bit deeper to make sure that it stays deep enough to where it stays wet, because down where that sand's at, that's where the water sits. So we wanna make sure that we go a little bit deeper, we amend that area, and then we should be good to go. And then we'll just go wider, maybe 2 times the width of the pot, maybe 3 times. It just depends on how good the soil looks. Now this, once again, I've already amended this area before with compost. So that's one of the reasons I have such a deep layer of organic matter right here. So I won't have to go as wide, but if you have very bad soil, I recommend go 3 times the width of the pot. So that way you have plenty of space where the roots can grow into as the tree gets bigger. Now I'm doing my best not to kill these avocado roots, because I like my avocado too. And don't be fooled into thinking that you can't put plants close together. Just keep in mind that if you do plant a blueberry close to a tree like this, as long as it's facing south and you come in here and you trim any growth that's shading over your blueberry, you'll be good to go. Just come and stand right where the blueberry spot is and look where the sun travels, and you'll know if it's a good spot or not. So you might need to come out in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, and you'll know, okay, does it get sun all day? And those 3 times, okay, it's a good spot. It's literally that simple. But you do need to keep in mind that in the summer, the sun's gonna be right above you. But in the winter, it's gonna be kind of off in an angle like this, so it's gonna come in different. So just make sure overhead is clear. So if you're wondering, is this deep enough? Take your pot, stick it in here, and you can see the soil level, we're about even with what we're around. You can see that as long as the soil doesn't go above right here where all these are splitting off, we're gonna be good to go. So what kind of fertilizer? Organic fertilizer. I like Dr. Earth, I like Happy Frog, I like blood meal, I like bone meal, I like kelp. You just wanna make sure that you don't use the salt-based nitrogen fertilizers because they'll burn your roots. So this right here, this is a Dr. Earth blend. You can get a big bag like at Home Depot or Lowe's. I'll put a link for Amazon so you can get it. What's good about it is that its main ingredients is fish bone, bone meal, feather meal, kelp meal, bacteria, and the mycorrhiza fungus. So whenever we put this, we don't need to put a lot at the base because once again, the roots aren't gonna really spend that much time down there. But I'm gonna put a little bit so that I can inoculate it with the fungus. I'm gonna put it around the base or the roots of the pot here. So whenever we plant, I always put it, you can already see it has some fungus growing right here. So that's good. That means this has already been inoculated really well, but this fungus that comes from Dr. Earth is a very strong species. So it's gonna give you extra fungus power essentially, and your trees will grow amazing. I use this on everything, and you can see everything that you see in this video is no older than 3 years. So this stuff really works as long as you do this, and you don't need to go crazy, but keep in mind by putting it here on the top, as it breaks down, the water is gonna carry it deeper. And we'll do one more. We're gonna put it mainly here on the top because we're gonna come back and we're gonna cover this. Normally you don't need to do this, but I'm gonna push down pretty hard. And the reason why is because I have a bunch of big roots down there and I wanna make sure there's not really big air pockets down in the base. But if you don't have roots, you don't need to push down this hard. You just wanna make sure that all the soil is connected so that way the water can flow between it into the roots. Now we're gonna take our mulch. So my question is, would you grow a blueberry?